150,000. That's how many people die every single day. So before I get into my presentation, let's have a moment of gratitude for the fact that our heart is beating, we are breathing, we are alive today. Because love and gratitude are two of the biggest healers we have in this world. So everything I'm going to share with you will not work unless you have those two components. I'm Ben Azadi. I'm called the health detective because I investigate dysfunction to bring the body back to functioning normal, the way it was designed to be. God, Mother Nature, love, the universe, whatever you believe in, we were designed to thrive, to live 120 years old, disease-free. So it is my job, it is my duty and obligation to educate the world, not medicate the world, to teach the world, not treat the world. And I live it to lead it. You see, this is who I am today. This is who I was 10 years ago. I've actually been obese for most of my life. And it wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I was forced to make a decision. You see, the thing about hitting rock bottom is that it's a beautiful place and it's a scary place. It's beautiful because you realize that there's nowhere to go but up. And it's scary because it's where do you start? Where do you go from here? And when I say rock bottom, my rock bottom was really down in the dirt because I was not just depressed, I was actually suicidal. I was actually on Google looking for ways to kill myself. I was scared to be in a room alone because of the thoughts I would have in my head. I was tearing down myself on the inside. You know, I was physically obese and I was mentally obese. I was mentally bankrupt. The only thing that stopped me from pursuing suicide was thinking about my mother, thinking about what I would leave for her, and I would never do that to my mother. So I had a decision to make, and that decision came from clarity from the late and great Wayne Dyer, who said, if other people were the cause of your problems, you would have to hire a psychiatrist for the world in order for you to get better. And that made so much sense to me. I was blaming everyone and everything for all of my problems, my genes, my enabling family members. You know, there's the fact that cheap food is cheap and it's everywhere and it's available. But it wasn't until I took full responsibility, I said those words, I am responsible, that everything shifted, everything changed. You see, at this point, I was 250 pounds, 34% body fat, size 38 waist for jeans, and mentally obese. After I made the decision to take responsibility over my life, I went from 250 pounds to 170 pounds, 34% body fat, 6% body fat. More important than all of the physical attributes that I got, I went from being mentally obese to carving out a mental six-pack. And I believe that's more important than a physical six-pack. You see, all my life, I wanted a physical six-pack because I was bullied, I was picked on, I was addicted to drugs, I was addicted to video games, I was addicted to bad food. I was tiptoeing my way through life, hoping to make it safely to death. At 24 years old, I was alive in the definition of my heart was beating, but in reality, I was asleep. I was hypnotized. I was numbing myself with anything that would numb me from facing responsibility. So my message right now is to take responsibility. You have to be your own health detective, okay? And this really didn't hit me until my father got sick. You see, this man right here, he immigrated from Iran back in the 1970s with my mom in order to come here and start a new family for their future family, which would be me and my sister. Scary decision they made, but they made that decision. And now I have the opportunity to live in America because of them. But my father, he suffered with type 2 diabetes for my entire life. I would take him to his doctor's appointments, and I did everything the doctors told me to do. Fill up his medication, get some fruit for him, some grains, low-fat diet, everything. And I watched his health deteriorate year after year after year. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that he suffered a massive stroke, which paralyzed his entire right side of his body. He lost the ability to speak, and he was bedridden. And I visited my father every single week at the hospital for months. He wasn't able to say one word to me. He couldn't even move his arm. And I saw his body shrink before my eyes after every visit, just deteriorate. And he was there for 9 months. And I visited him on a Monday night, August 12th. He was in the worst shape I had ever seen him in. He was throwing up all over himself. He was convulsing. I had never seen him that bad. And the nurses came in, they cleaned him up, and he looked better. And I walked up to his bed, and I kissed him on his forehead, and I told him that I'm your son, you're my father, and I love you. And I said the words, hasta la vista, baby, which is the 3 words he used to say to me as a young boy from the movie Terminator. And I told him I loved him forever. And I went home that night, and I prayed that night like I prayed every other night. But there was something different about this prayer. I was saying the same words, please end my father's suffering. He has suffered enough. And some force, I don't know what it was, there was a connection with those words that I was saying. The next day, less than 24 hours later, I was at home and I received a phone call. I look at the caller ID, and it was the hospital. And I knew something was up. My heart dropped. I picked up the phone, and they informed me that my father stopped breathing that morning. He passed away. And I sat down on my couch, and I remember my dog was looking at me, and he knew something was up. And I just started crying out of happiness that my father is no longer suffering, and feeling a lot of sadness because my one and only father is no longer with me. The man who came to America to give me this opportunity to live a free life. And ever since that happened, I have dedicated my life to finding out what happened to my father, what's happening to America. In a moment, I'm going to share some really alarming statistics with you. And I have come to realize the information that I'm about to share with you, which, by the way, will challenge your current way of thinking. It's not going to be the old, eat more fruits and vegetables. I've come to realize that the same information that I'm about to share with you, the same information that I'm sharing across the world as much as possible, is the same information that would have saved my father's life. I also understand that I was given that mountain so I could show the world that this mountain can be moved. Okay, so that is my pain to purpose message, and I'm on a mission to educating 1 billion people on planet Earth to help them become their own health detective, because I've seen what happens when we don't take our health in our own hands, with myself and with my father. And here's the truth. Nobody dies from diabetes. They die from the degeneration of it. We're not dying from this. We're killing ourselves. Here are the stats. 60% of Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic. It used to be called adult onset diabetes. Now children are getting it, and they changed the name to type 2 diabetes. So for this lecture, I am referring to type 2 diabetes. 68% of diabetics end up getting heart disease. 16% end up getting a stroke, which is what happened to my father. 70% end up with neuropathy, where their nerves are degenerating and they can't walk anymore. I remember seeing my father just tiptoeing through the house. He was having so much nerve pain. And look at the stat all the way at the bottom, that red. These statistics accompany those who are on medication. Okay? These are not stats from people who say, I don't want to take medication. These are the stats of people who go on medication. What if I told you the same diet that the American Diabetes Association recommends is the same diet that causes diabetes? What if I told you the same food they give a diabetic patient at the hospital is the same food that causes diabetes? What if I told you the same food they give a chemo patient at a hospital is the same food that causes cancer? You see, conventional medicine, they treat the symptom, but there's always a cause and an effect. There's not just an effect. Nobody wakes up with diabetes. Nobody wakes up with cancer. You can't treat the symptom and expect the person to get well. We were not designed that way. The truth of the matter is that if you want to get well, you have to heal the cell. So what do I mean by that? We're made up of trillions of these cells. We have estimated 50 to trillion cells in the human body. Every second, we're losing cells. Every second, we're building up new cells. You see, every cell has a cell membrane. Every cell has these receptor sites, right? Think of these receptor sites as like cell phone antenna signals. They're receiving messages from your hormones. We have over 600 hormones in the body. They're the language of the human body. I'm going to talk about insulin because insulin relates to diabetes. Insulin's job is to get that sugar out of the blood because sugar in the blood is toxic to the body. The human body only wants about 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar in the blood at all times. So when we eat food, especially high carbohydrate foods, it raises blood glucose. So insulin is not the bad guy. He's actually a survival mechanism right here. He takes glucose and sends a signal to the cell, and it goes into the cell for energy, right? Our cell we have our DNA. So my talk is called The Reversal of Destiny because most people have been led to believe that, hey, diabetes runs in my family, that's my destiny. Hey, my mom had breast cancer, that's my destiny. Well, I believe that this is only maybe 3% of the equation, and we have 97% control over the expression of that. The expression, what the cell membrane, which is a lipid bilayer made out of protein, fat, and cholesterol, that is the bodyguard of your cell. That's what tells the DNA to either trigger the bad genes or thrive with the good genes. We have control over that expression. You see, the problem is not a lack of medication. The problem is not even glucose. The problem is cellular inflammation. I'm not talking about a sprained ankle. I'm not talking about a sore shoulder. I'm talking about cellular inflammation. When we have inflamed cells, it doesn't matter how much insulin you give a person, how much medication you give a diabetic patient. That can't get in. The message is not being received because the inflammation is blunting it. That's like you screaming at me, I have my fingers in my ears, I can't hear you. Yeah, you could scream louder and it might work at first, but what will happen? I'll become more deaf. This will become more blunted. So this is like going to the gas station, opening up your gas tank. You can't open it, it's locked. So you grab the gas nozzle and pour it all over your car and then drive away. That's not going to work. That's not going to get the job done. We need to downregulate inflammation by eating what I teach, the keto diet, by doing some fasting, by incorporating a lot of these ancient healing strategies to help downregulate inflammation, to help keep glucose and insulin stable. Once we do that, we're attacking the cause. When we attack the cause, by a side effect of that is the symptoms go away. You see, one thing I did not understand when my father was going to his doctor's appointments and I was driving him to all of them was that they were giving him insulin and they were telling him to lose weight. And I thought, wait a minute, doctor, you're giving my father insulin and telling him to lose weight. Isn't insulin a fat storage hormone? And it did not make sense until I started doing the research. So I encourage you to be your own health detective. This information is different. This information could scare you. But here's the deal. Faith and fear both demand for you to believe in something you cannot see. I'm asking you to choose faith over fear. So this is what I teach. Ancient healing strategies. Downregulate inflammation. Our job is to remove the interference, and the body, it's designed so remarkable, it will heal itself. And I teach this on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/KetoCamp. I want to thank you so much for your time and your attention today. Thank you.